What was the smallest country in the world, and why was it demolished? The story of the smallest country isn't always about a place marked on official maps. Sometimes, it's about a big idea on a tiny spot. This is the story of a man, his dream, and a small patch of concrete that became a country. It was called Rose Island. It stood in the sea off the coast of Italy. It was a place born from one man's mind, built by his hands, and then taken down by force. Giorgio Rosa was an engineer. He lived in Italy. He was a smart man. He liked to think big. He liked to build things. He saw problems, and he wanted to solve them. But he also had a different kind of dream. He wanted to build a place that was free, a place where people could be themselves, a place that was outside the rules. This dream started small. It started as an idea in his head. What if he could build something in the water? Something that was not on anyone's land. Something that was in international waters. Then it would not belong to any country. It would be its own place. It would be truly free. He thought about this idea for many years. He drew pictures. He made plans. He worked on the details. Building in the sea is very hard. The sea is powerful. Waves crash, winds blow, salt water eats metal. He needed to make something strong. Something that could stand against the sea. Something that would last. He picked a spot. It was in the Adriatic Sea. It was about 6 nautical miles off the coast of Rimini, Italy. This distance was important. At the time, a country's waters only went out 3 nautical miles. Anything past that was international water. This meant his island would be outside Italy's control. It would be a place of its own. His idea was not just a simple platform, it was a grand vision. He imagined a place where people could come. They could meet, they could talk, they could enjoy themselves. There would be a restaurant, there would be a bar, there would be a post office. It would be a hub, a new kind of place for people to gather. He wanted to create a micronation. Not just a club, not just a building. He wanted a place with its own rules, its own identity, its own freedom. This was a bold idea. Many people would have called it crazy, but Giorgio Rosa was not like many people. He believed in his dream, he believed he could make it real, he was ready to start the hard work. He was ready to build his own world. He wanted to show that freedom could be built. Even in the middle of the sea, the construction of Rose Island was a massive undertaking. It was not a simple project. It was complex and challenging. Giorgio Rosa was an engineer, and he put all his skill into it. He started in 1964. The work went on for many years. It took him 4 years to build his dream. 4 long years of hard work. He decided to build a platform, not a floating one. He wanted it to be permanent. He designed a structure with strong steel pillars. These pillars would be hollow. They would be sunk deep into the seabed. Then they would be filled with concrete. This would make them very sturdy. They would hold the platform up. They would keep it still. He used special techniques. He built the pillars on land first. Then he towed them out to sea. This was a difficult job. The pillars were huge. Getting them into place was tricky. He needed special equipment. He needed a lot of help. He worked with a team of people. They shared his vision. They believed in what he was doing. They worked hard alongside him. The first part was getting the foundation right. The pillars had to be straight. They had to be firmly planted. The seabed itself was not flat. It was not easy to work with. But Giorgio Rosa was determined. He oversaw every step. He made sure everything was done right. He was very precise. Once the pillars were in place, the platform itself could be built. This was the main deck. It was made of concrete. It was a large, flat surface. It rose above the water. It was strong enough to hold buildings, strong enough to hold people. The platform was not just one level. It had a multi-story structure on top. This was the heart of Rose Island. It had a restaurant. It had a bar. People could eat and drink there. They could enjoy the views of the sea. It also had a post office. Yes, a post office. Rose Island even had its own stamps. It had a gift shop. People could buy souvenirs. They could take home a piece of this unique place. There were other facilities, too. There was a small living space, maybe for Rosa himself, or for the people who worked there. There was a freshwater system. They had to find a way to get fresh water. They drilled for it. They found a source deep under the seabed. This was another engineering marvel. They meant they could sustain themselves. They were not completely reliant on the mainland. The island had power, too. Generators provided electricity. Lights lit up the platform at night. Music played. It became a vibrant place. People from the Italian coast started to hear about it. They were curious. They came by boat. They wanted to see this strange new place. This place in the middle of the sea. The grand opening was in 1968. It was a big moment. After years of work, the dream was real. Rose Island was open for business. It was a tourist attraction. But it was also more than that. For Giorgio Rosa, it was the first step. the first step towards a new kind of freedom. And he had built his utopia, he had created his own piece of the world. Now he was ready for the next step. He was ready to declare it a country. After years of building, Rose Island was ready. It was not just a platform, it was not just a tourist spot. For Giorgio Rosa, it was a sovereign nation. He made it official on June 24th, 1968. He declared Rose Island an independent state. He called it the Independent Republic of Rose Island. This was a bold move. No one had done anything like it before. He wasn't just building a structure, he was creating a new country. He believed it had the right to exist. He believed in the idea of self-determination. He believed his island was truly separate. Rose Island had its own government. It wasn't a big one, it was simple. Giorgio Rosa was its president. He was the head of state. He was the founder. He was the leader. He had a small team of helpers. They were his cabinet. They helped him run the island. It had its own currency. It wasn't widely used. But it was a symbol of its independence. It was called the mill. It was just a token, really. But it showed the intent. It showed that Rose Island was serious about being a country. It even had its own language. Esperanto. This was a language created to be universal, to be understood by everyone. It was a language of peace and unity. This choice was deliberate. It showed the spirit of Rose Island. It was meant to be open to all, not just Italians, not just one group of people. The flag of Rose Island was unique too. It had 3 roses, 1 red, 1 yellow, 1 orange. They stood for freedom, peace, and progress. The flag flew high above the platform. It was a clear sign. This was a new nation. Why did Giorgio Rosa do this? He had many reasons. He wanted to create a place free from taxes. Italy had taxes. Many countries had taxes. He saw his island as a place where people could avoid these. They could live and work without the burden of state fees. This was a big draw. He also wanted freedom from bureaucracy, rules, permits, paperwork. Governments often have a lot of it. He wanted to escape that. He wanted a simpler way, a more direct way. He imagined a place where things were easy, where people could just enjoy life. He saw it as an experiment in living, an experiment in self-governance. Could a small group of people on a small platform truly run themselves? Could they build a better society? He wanted to find out. The Declaration of Independence caught people's attention. Locals were curious. Some were excited. They saw it as a fun, quirky place, a new place to visit. Tourists flocked to it. They came from Rimini. They came to see this floating country. They enjoyed the bar. They enjoyed the restaurant. They sent postcards with Rose Island stamps. The media picked up the story. Newspapers wrote about it. TV stations reported on it. It was a strange story. A man built his own country in the sea. It was fascinating. It was unheard of, but not everyone was happy. The Italian government was not amused. Not at all. They watched. They listened. They were not going to let this stand. They saw it as a problem. A serious problem. The party was about to end. The dream was about to face a harsh reality. The tiny new country had made a powerful enemy. An enemy that had ships and soldiers and laws. The Italian government did not like Rose Island. Not one bit. They saw Giorgio Rosa's Declaration of Independence as a direct challenge, a direct insult. They saw it as illegal. They did not believe it was a real country. They thought it was a trick. Their main concern was simple. Rose Island was claiming to be a sovereign state. But it was too close to Italy. Even if it was just outside the 3-mile limit, Italy felt it was still within its sphere. They argued that it was on their continental shelf. This meant it was still under their control, or at least they could claim it was. They worried about many things. What if Rose Island became a place for illegal activities? A place for smuggling, a place for gambling that was not allowed in Italy, a place for tax evasion. These were serious concerns for any government. They saw a potential safe haven for criminals, a spot just offshore outside their laws. They also thought it was an embarrassment. Add a joke. How could a man build a platform and declare it a country? It made Italy look foolish. It made their borders seem weak. They needed to show that they were in charge. They needed to show that their laws applied. So, Italy took action. The first steps were diplomatic. They told Giorgio Rosa to stop. They told him to take down his flag. They told him to remove his claim of independence. But Rosa refused. He stood firm. He believed in his right. He believed in his freedom. He tried to argue his case. He said he was in international waters. He said he had followed all the rules. He had built it fairly, he had declared his country openly, he believed international law was on his side. He thought he was protected, but Italy did not agree. They did not want to debate. They wanted to shut it down. They started with a blockade. Italian Navy ships surrounded Rose Island. They stopped boats from going to or from the platform. No supplies could get in. No visitors could get out. Rose Island was cut off. This was a big problem for the island. It relied on visitors, it relied on supplies from the mainland. Without these, it could not function. The restaurant ran out of food. The bar ran out of drinks. The people on the island were isolated. They were stuck. Giorgio Rosa did not give up easily. He tried to get help. He tried to get international recognition. He wrote to organizations. He tried to tell the world about his fight. But no one came to his aid. No other country stepped in. It was a fight between one man's dream and a powerful nation. The situation grew worse. The blockade continued. The island became a lonely place. The vibrant atmosphere was gone. It was quiet, it was empty, the Italian government was making its point clear. They would not tolerate Rose Island. Eventually, the Italian authorities decided enough was enough. They moved past the blockade. They decided to remove the island physically. They decided to demolish it. Make it disappear from paper. They would make it disappear from the sea. The storm had gathered, and it was about to break. The dream of Rose Island was facing its end. The power of the state was about to crush the freedom of one man's creation. The Italian government made its final decision. Rose Island had to go. They decided on a drastic step. They would destroy it. They would make sure no one could ever try this again. They would set an example. On February 11th, 1969, the Italian Navy moved in. This was not a small operation. It was a military action. Divers were sent down. They placed explosives on the pillars. The same strong pillars that Giorgio Rosa had so carefully built. The ones that held up his dream. The first explosion happened. It was meant to bring down the structure. But the island was tough. Giorgio Rosa had built it well, very well. The first blast only damaged it. It did not sink it. The platform remained standing. It was broken, but still there. This showed just how strong Rosa's engineering was. It also showed the Italian authorities how serious he had been. He hadn't just built a flimsy structure. He had built something meant to last, something meant to withstand the elements, even explosives. So the Navy had to try again. They planned a second, larger detonation. More explosives were brought. More divers worked. They placed them in strategic spots. They wanted to make sure this time, they wanted to make sure Rose Island would be completely gone. On February 13th, 1969, the second explosion happened. It was much more powerful. This time, the structure could not hold. The pillars buckled. The concrete platform cracked. It groaned. It slowly began to tilt. Then, it started to sink. The independent Republic of Rose Island was gone. It disappeared beneath the waves. The dream of Giorgio Rosa was physically destroyed. His efforts, his vision, his years of hard work, all vanished into the sea. It was a very final end, a clear message from the Italian state. Giorgio Rosa watched it happen. He was heartbroken. He had put so much of himself into that island. It was his creation. His child, in a way. To see it blown up, to see it sink, must have been devastating. He had lost his country, he had lost his freedom, but what did Rose Island mean? It was a symbol of human ingenuity, a symbol of the desire for freedom, for independence, for a different way of life. It showed how far one person would go for an idea. It also showed the power of the state. Governments do not like challenges to their authority. They do not like when people try to create their own rules, especially when it's so close to their borders. They will act to protect what they see as their territory, their laws, their power. The story of Rose Island is largely forgotten today. It was a small incident in the grand scheme of things. But it remains a fascinating tale. A tale of a man who dared to dream big. A man who built his own country. And a country that was literally demolished. It reminds us that even the smallest countries can have big stories. And that sometimes freedom comes with a very high price, even if that freedom is just a few square meters of concrete in the sea.